name is Polina and I study psychology, in particular counseling. And well-known dissertation is part of the course, so I focus mine on, as Sifo said, how practicing martial arts can improve and maintain the mental health of adults. What are the similarities between martial arts teachings and therapy? So I structure my questions into 3 categories: therapy, martial arts, and similarities between those 2. And I've interviewed 12 participants, all of them martial arts practitioners. 8 of those 12 shared that they had the experience of therapy. And what was interesting for me to find is that they've engaged in therapy after engaging in martial arts practice. And it became evident that practicing martial arts opened them to a deeper self-discovery. About the martial arts questions, there are 3 that were favorite to me. Namely, what is the meaning you find in martial arts? How do you understand the philosophy of martial arts? And what is the biggest lesson you've learned from practicing martial arts? And there are a few answers that stood out. Regarding the meaning, 2 answers: a way of living and expansion of the possibilities in one's life. And regarding the philosophy, a way of life and a component that contributes to self-development. And regarding the biggest lesson they've learned, the answer that stood out were: keep on going, be like a water, knowing is not enough, one must apply, and trust in oneself. And regarding the similarities, I found 5 main: awareness, road, finding answers, relationship with oneself and others, and choice. After completing my dissertation, I started wondering how would I answer those questions, specifically about martial arts. And what I've discovered was that the meaning I'm finding within martial arts is balance, harmony, and inner peace. My understanding of the philosophy of martial arts is to understand oneself and the world and be oneself with the world. And the biggest lesson I've learned from practicing martial arts is that challenges are there to help you heal and grow, and definitely not to defeat you. All said, obvious, practicing martial arts cultivates discipline, focus, resilience. It can promote self-esteem, self-confidence, a sense of achievement, security, and so on. But what also they can cultivate is the warrior mindset. And what basically that is to control the war force within you and not let the war force control you. You do that by cultivating that force, choose to live peacefully while still being able to tap in that other area. When somebody starts practicing martial arts and start developing the warrior mindset, one of the first things that is likely to happen is to build discipline, right? So the basic thing to understand about discipline, it gives a conscious, objective, free will. That is a result of the commitment to the plan one has and not avoiding that plan because of thoughts, feelings, body sensations, because after all, they're all temporary, right? Eventually, you're finding out and you learn that free will is external from those 3. And the more disciplined one is, the more one realizes that the body sensations, the thoughts, the emotions, they're all tools with which we receive information. And when that discipline is absent, one is basically at the mercy of those 3. I personally received this lesson at a very early age from my philosophy teacher. He was keep telling me again and again and again, doesn't matter what's going on with you, doesn't matter what's going on around you, you keep on reading and writing. And the reason for that is that within that discipline, one is able to find the answer to the struggles, or otherwise said, the light in the darkness. And eventually, you're realizing that those small sensations, thoughts, emotions, well, they don't matter as much as your bigger goal. And this is basically how you achieve. I must say that discipline is essential to life satisfaction. Also, it builds more resilience, therefore the resistance is less. And next thing that is likely to happen is you building awareness of oneself and others. And in order to explain that one better, I would like to quote Soke Anshu Krista Jacobson, who is a martial arts teacher, Japanese martial arts. And she says, perception, what you see, is based on perspective. And perspective is based on position. Position comes from experience. If you experience certain things, you take a position on that experience. That experience now gives you perspective and knowledge of that, which then helps you perceive the world. And what that basically teaches is that, well, when somebody shares opinion, they pretty much shares their life experience, right? And when that is understood, your mind becomes curious instead of judgmental. Curious about how this person got to this point. What did they experience to learn this and this? And when you get this, you go into the point of how did I build the vision I have, the opinion I have? And then one can realize that there's no such a thing as only one way. Another way of looking at all of this is filter, right? Namely, the way you're conditioned to see/perceive something or someone. This is basically how you think, what your beliefs are, how they're built, and what would you feel as a result of what you're conditioned/taught to see. Bruce Lee talks about this one very clearly, and by the way, bear with me, I'm going to mention him quite a lot because his mind is just extraordinary. So he explains that you need to see the fight as a fight, right? If you put 3 martial artists to observe a fight, you will notice that each one of them will comment the fight through the lenses that they're conditioned to see, basically, the style that they're trained into, right? Which is not to see the fight as it is, but to see through the filter, right? And I would like you to keep in mind that one's perspective is based on the position of the experience that one had. And so the deeper you go, the more is revealed to you, and at some point you're going to come across the concepts such as life and death, acceptance, letting go, regulation/emotional regulation, harmony/inner peace, mind-body connection, flow or energy, ki, chi, the self, the observation of the self, and so on. But an interesting concept to talk about is the ego and the identification. The ego is the pure identification of oneself. How you dress, what your hobbies are, fears, likes, dislikes, and so on and so forth. The ego defines who, how, and why you are, right? It basically defines your temporary identity in this lifetime. And the question here comes, what are you using your ego to identify with? What are you using your ego for? And here again, Bruce Lee speaks about the lesson of the ego. And I quote, "The point to be made about ego is that man should use his ego and not be used by ego or blinded by it." And when you're not aware of your ego basically becomes the driver of your life, right? But when you're aware of it and you start studying it, you can find the motivation behind what you're doing. Basically, the why behind your thoughts, action, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to give you an example to make this one a little bit clear. Let's say person A goes to practice martial arts with the intention of becoming undefeatable because he had the unfortunate experience of being robbed, right? So he'll have a very hard time being put on the floor because that will automatically activate the ego. You see, the ego doesn't want to be in a position of defeat, or otherwise said, overpowered again, striving for survival. Because this process is unrealized, person A is not conscious of his ego. This ego will limit his learning and the development of his skills, right? And in some Japanese martial arts, the ego of a person, especially when that ego turns the person into a proud, conceited person, right? Is seen as tengu, or a long-nosed goblin, right? And if that tengu wants to become a human again, it needs to break his own nose. And if somebody else did it, it will really, really hurt. So the basic lesson here is that ego is part of our human existence, and it's better to be our friend than our foe. And at some point, when you're developing this mindset, you come across the concept of uncertainty and control. And when we're speaking about uncertainty and control, we automatically speak also about the natural human desire to know, to predict, to be sure, so to feel the sense of safety and security, right? So uncertainty brings anxiety as it carries the unknown. And anxiety often leads to avoidance because, let's face it, nobody likes anxiety. That avoidance leads to staying in the comfort zone where everything is controlled, and then we can feel the sense of safety and security. However, at some point, martial arts practice teaches you that staying in your comfort zone limits you. And the reason for that is because you limit your expansion, your awareness, and your growth. And you basically cannot become more than your comfort zone. The unknown itself brings the potential of something scary, something dangerous, something that is not fully understood. And at some point, while developing the warrior mindset, one learns that, well, it's only natural to be afraid of what you do not understand. And an interesting thing I've learned while practicing martial arts is that there are many ways to deal with trauma. Definition of trauma, put simply, is distress without resolution. And when hurt, the human mind has this incredible amount of possible ways to create these so-called coping mechanisms, right? And in the beginning, they do the job. However, later on, they becoming blockages. And the beauty of practicing martial arts is that if you want to move forward, you basically need to face what you were running away from so far. There's no going around, no shortcuts or whatsoever. And you're reaching that moment where you basically need to face yourself. Sometimes you're finding that you were your worst enemy. And that is a hard battle. And the harsh truth is that you basically cannot run away from it. Doesn't matter how much it seems like you can. Bruce Lee, he puts it very clearly, and I quote, "As he matures, a martial artist will realize that his kick or a punch is really not so much a tool to conquer his opponent, but a tool to explode through his consciousness, his ego, his fear, and all the mental blocks." At some point, you're going to realize that, well, it doesn't matter what kept you or still keeps you stuck, and it won't matter because you're going to realize, I'm a warrior. Your past traumas are not only something that can hold you back, but they're also something that can make you stronger, can give you more resilience, wisdom, and open new doors. And from here, any new challenge will also become a new opportunity to grow and to learn. And all of that is a result of acceptance. There's no better person saying this one clearly but Carl Jung, and I quote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And the more you develop your mind, the clearer your mind will become. And when that starts happening, the door of forgiveness to oneself also opens. And the more your mind becomes clearer, the clearer it becomes that the root of a healthy mind is flexibility. Martial arts are only one of the many possible ways to reach healing, improvement, a better life, awareness, enlightenment, wisdom, knowledge, and so on and so forth. As Miyamoto Musashi said, you must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. Within the warrior mindset, you need to understand that warrior can also be understood as to carry the war. And through that physical war, one is able to reach the inner war and bring peace, right? And again, this is only one way to reach that state. It's not the ultimate way. Ultimate way is just a filter. And when you study martial arts and when you develop the warrior mindset, eventually you'll learn that everything is connected. And I can't express this one better but to quote Leonardo da Vinci. To develop a complete mind, study the science of art, study the art of science, learn how to see, realize that everything connects to everything else. And once again, one's perspective is based on the position of the experience that one had. I experienced and learned mainly from martial arts, psychology, and philosophy. And now, I would like to ask you, what is your source of information? How did your experience shape you? What did you learn from your experience? How well do you know yourself? And lastly, have you started discovering the warrior within you yet? Thank you.